Well, foreign leaders, supporters and ordinary citizens gathered at a national stadium in Zimbabwe's capital Harare to bid farewell to the country's founding father, Robert Mugabe. Mugabe died in a Singapore hospital a week ago at the age of 95. While the former Zimbabwean president was described as a visionary leader who put the interests of Africa first, he will be buried at a shrine in Heroes Acre Shrine in Harare in about 30 days' time. Mugabe led Zimbabwe for 37 years, from independence until he was ousted by the army in November 2017. Zimbabwe's current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has described the former president, Robert Mugabe, as an icon of liberation, a Pan-Africanist indeed, who dedicated his life to the emancipation and empowerment of his people.
A true statesman who resolutely defended our country throughout his life. The founding president of the Republic of Zambia, Dr. Mzee Kenneth David Kaunda, and Comrade Mugabe were the two only survivors from the generation of leaders of the frontline states, the rest having passed on, such as the late Comrades Agostinho Neto of Angola, Seretse Khama of Botswana, Samora Moses Machel of Mozambique, and Julius Mwalimu Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania. Now, Mzee Kenneth David Kaunda remains alone. May the good Lord continue to watch over him. These gallant men will forever remain the symbol of Africa's struggles for independence and statehood. It is now incumbent on us who remain in the land of the living to carry on the rich heritage they bequeathed to us. I want to thank you all who continue to console our nation, sharing our grief. Your presence in such huge numbers today and your kind words of comfort from across nations and continents is solace and a strong statement. A statement which exposes a lie heavily sponsored by a retrogressive narrative, falsely framing the late Comrade Mugabe, giving him many false names, routinely and systematically vilifying him. But today, the truth is laid bare and open. We honor and remember our late African icon in our special own way, demonstrating that he had many friends, allies, and followers.
Well, for more analysis, we're joined again in studio by Mr. Tino Mambo. He's the director of the Zimbabwe's Exiles Forum. Welcome back, Tino. Thank you for staying with us on the SABC News Desk.
Thank you.
Well, you just heard President Mnangagwa there giving us some commentary and description of the late President Robert Mugabe. What do you make of that description as the late Mugabe as a liberation icon and a Pan-Africanist hero on the continent?
It is true indeed that Mr. Mugabe is a Pan-Africanist theoretically, and in some instances we did try to participate and we saw some action in terms of the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the work that he did in Mozambique when there was some disturbances between Frelimo and Renamo, and also the participation that the government of Zimbabwe under him has been taking in terms of Somalia, where there's been some disturbances, Sudan and that. So it's, in a nutshell, you would have done us much proud in that instance. That's, I mean, back home, that is where he seems to have messed up a lot.
All right, hated by some, loved by some, vilified. How do you see the future for Zimbabwe now that the founding father is no more? And what kind of role, has he been active in politics since he actually stepped down about 2 years ago? Or rather, he was ousted by the military at that. And what's the effect going to be, his demise going to be now on the future political landscape of Zimbabwe going forward?
When Mr. Mugabe left power by means of a coup that happened in Zimbabwe, he went out of power a bitter man. I think you would have seen when he spoke to the media and when he addressed the media. But one thing that he managed to do, albeit it was too late, is to say whether it was out of anger or it was out of him understanding that there was need for change in Zimbabwe. He supported the presidency of Nelson Chamisa. He did say that he was going to vote for Nelson Chamisa, realizing that the ZANU-PF government was not in a position to deliver change to the people of Zimbabwe. But what matters more now is that he has passed on, and the situation that he has left, the trend of violence, the trend of killing of opposition supporters, the lack of basic commodities to sustain basic livelihoods for the people of Zimbabwe. He has left all that, and I would have appreciated that Mr. Mnangagwa would realize that he has got a country that is polarized to an extent. He could not even mention or acknowledge that there was Nelson Chamisa at the stadium today. He mentioned the Politburo members and that, but it would have been a good gesture from him if he had mentioned his arch rival Nelson Chamisa and say, please, let's work together. I know that you are here. And in memory of Robert Mugabe, with his bad and the good, let's try and build a better and functioning Zimbabwe. But that we don't see, and we just heard him, I particularly heard him dragging words and words and words with his new style of speech. It's irrelevant.
Tina, I want to take a step back. There were so many questions around the time the president passed away, the late President Mugabe, that is. And the fact that he chose to seek health care in a foreign country and not at home. What message do you think this sends to his fellow Zimbabweans and the continent at large?
We have always known that in Africa, the leaders that we have treat their countries as cemeteries. They love to be buried in their countries, but they do not want to develop a health system so that they can also attain the same level of care. I think you would have seen that there are quite a number of African presidents who have had the tendency, or who have had the opportunity to build their own hospitals, but they didn't do that. They chose to go abroad and seek treatment there. And that baffles the mind of ordinary Zimbabweans and the mind of Africans at large to say, if indeed one is a hero, why would you then go and seek medical treatment abroad? And why the hell, after 37 years you're in power, you're unable to build even a 2-roomed hospital just for yourself and your family, and you say the rest of the people don't really matter, I'm going to get treatment here. He has never been able to do that. So it shows a lack of leadership and a lack of well-articulated positions. I would encourage that, to the current presidents in Malawi, in Zambia, all over the world, all over Africa, they should be trying to make sure that the health facilities in their countries are well maintained to an extent that they don't need to spend millions and millions in chartering their sick bodies from their homelands to the hospitals abroad, and again chartering their dead bodies back. It's an unnecessary expenditure that we should not be meeting at this particular juncture of the evolution of Africa.
Mugabe was an intellectual great, a luminary on the continent, a liberation hero he's being praised for. And he did indeed speak about racial unity long before Nelson Mandela emerged from prison. But somehow one gets a sense that he lost his way. What led to his unraveling, and what in your mind are some of those pivotal, poor, bad decisions he made?
The most disturbing one is on Gukurahundi. That is the period that dated his time in office, to an extent that a certain group of people began to detest him as a leader. Unfortunately, for the 95 years that he lived, he was unable to probably apologize in the same manner that we saw Mr. Ramaphosa doing, apologizing on behalf of South Africans in terms of xenophobia. Mr. Mugabe has never been able, for that matter, to apologize for Gukurahundi. He has never been able to apologize for beating up opposition supporters. I think we have seen images, several images for that matter, of a beaten and battered Morgan Tsvangirai having been attacked by security service personnel. Those are some areas that really make things bad for him. And also his inability to know when to quit. I think for gamblers, they know when to stop. And if you continue gambling and gambling, you are creating trouble for yourself. And there won't be any good words that can come out from anybody.
Do you think a process like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission we had in South Africa would have done much to alter the trajectory of Zimbabwe?
There are several reports that have been given in terms of Gukuraundi. There are several attempts that have been made, but they have not been publicized, simply because that the people that are pinpointed or the people that are blamed for those atrocities are the very same people in power. The thing that is lacking in Zimbabwe is openness and realizing that without being open with one another and agreeing that we have erred, there's no way we can move as a nation. The leadership must now agree that they have erred in the past and that they are also available to move ahead with every Zimbabwean in solving the problems that you see. Mr. Mnangagwa has a very, very clear-cut task, but unfortunately, each and every time that he gets an opportunity, he keeps on missing it.
How do you respond to those who argue that the late Mr. Mugabe was vilified and really slammed because he had the courage and determination to stand up to the West, Tino?
Well, it's one thing or another to go to the United Nations and say that keep my Zimbabwe, I'll keep my South Africa, whatever the case might be, and I'll keep you keep your London, and I'll keep my Zimbabwe. It's one thing, you know. Deliverables matter. At the end of it all, people need food. At the end of it all, people need to go to school. At the end of it all, you don't want 3 million citizens abroad. When you can stand up to Tony Blair, you must be you must be able indeed to stand up to hunger. You can't stand up to Obama and not be able to stand up to hunger. If Mr. Ramaphosa now can let South Africans suffer and go to bed on empty stomachs and start shouting at the West and so, that doesn't bring food on the table. We want deliverables in Africa. We don't want rhetoric.
He was in power for nearly 40 years. What lessons can we take from Robert Mugabe's presidency and his leadership?
The first lesson is don't have to overstay in power. The second lesson is Africa has to move, and we cannot be held up by revolutionaries. We have got a serious problem of these revolutionary movements that have not been able to tell each other the truth. Now they've been eulogizing, I think would you have heard, one after the other, President Ramaphosa, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President
Obiang.
All of them, they said, here was a great man. But they never said to each other, you know, when we become open, we move mountains. There's not even one leader who has stood up and said, as much as you were a Pan-Africanist, Mr. Mugabe, you have got 3 million Zimbabweans that are abroad. We need to correct this and move forward. This is what we want to hear from our leaders. We need leaders that acknowledge that indeed we could be great, but there are certain areas that we are falling. If they do that in our closed-door meetings and we don't see results, we believe that they are cut from the same cloth. So we are in trouble.
Mr. Tino Mamboyo, Director of Zimbabwe's Exiles Forum, thank you so much for staying with us on the SABC News Desk this afternoon. We do appreciate your insights. Time to take